Well, I hope that everybody is having a good week, and I have been out of pocket. Lately, I've really been missing these videos and studies, and so I'm trying to play some catch up. This week, I've been out of town, so now I'm going to try to do a little catching up, get back on track this week, hopefully, and I look forward to sharing in these studies with you throughout the week, and hope they're encouraging, I hope they're helpful. I hope they'll make us continue to think and grow and learn. And today, we're in the Gospel of Luke as we continue in the Gospel account of Luke. In Luke chapter 5, where we left off last time, and we pick up in verse 33 of Luke chapter 5, where it says that they said to Jesus, we know that before Jesus was given grief by the scribes and the Pharisees because Jesus ate with tax collectors and sinners, and we saw that conversation. And now they say to Jesus in verse 33, having a criticism for his disciples, they say, "Why do the disciples of John fast often and make prayers? And likewise those of the Pharisees, but your disciples eat and drink." So that's their question. You got John the Baptist's disciples, which we know, what ends up happening to John. John ends up being arrested. At some point, he's actually executed and killed. But John's disciples are fasting and praying. The Pharisees are fasting and praying, but then they see Jesus and his disciples, and they're together a lot. They're eating, they're drinking. They're not spending a lot of time in fasting. Now, I want to say they're not praying because they could still pray, and they did, and even Jesus would pray often. But Jesus answers them, verse 34, "Can you make the friends of the bridegroom fast while the bridegroom is with them?" So Jesus gives them an illustration. Think about this. You got this wedding day. You've got a bridegroom. You got the groom. You got his friends who are with him. Would it make sense for the friends of the bridegroom to just be off somewhere, spending their time fasting and so forth, while the bridegroom is there with them? When really, if he's here, we need to spend time with the bridegroom. I mean, that's what anybody would do. Really, the times of fasting is when they would not be there, as he goes on to say, verse 35. "But the days will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them. Then they will fast in those days." And so Jesus is applying this to himself. Jesus is referring to himself as the bridegroom, his disciples as his friends. Jesus says, I'm here with them. They don't need to be away from me fasting, because we are together. We've got things to do. We've got places to go, people to see, work to get done. I've got to teach them. I've got to train them. I am here to help them and encourage them, to lead them and guide them, because there's coming a time when I'm not going to be with them. I'm going to be taken away from them. And then they will need to fast to keep their focus on me and to keep their mind and heart right. That will be a time of fasting. I mean, it makes sense. Jesus kind of answers back to them and says, it just wouldn't make sense for my disciples to spend their time fasting away from me. When we're here, I'm here to lead them, guide them, help them. We've got things to do. Let's go. And that's his answer. And then he gives them a parable in verses 36 through 39. He spoke a parable to them, saying, "No one puts a piece from a new garment on an old one. Otherwise, the new makes a tear, and also the piece that was taken out of the new does not match the old. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, or else the new wine will burst the wineskins and be spilled, and the wineskins will be ruined. But new wine must be put into new wineskins, and both are preserved. And no one, having drunk old wine, immediately desires new, for he says the old is better." And I tell you, this parable is a challenge to understand its meaning, for me anyways. Maybe, for you, or maybe for some, they've been able to figure out exactly what Jesus, meant by this. Some thoughts on this parable could be Jesus just talking about how he's, bringing in the new. And you don't just, bring in the new. Jesus is doing it carefully. Jesus is trying to go about it methodically to make sure that nothing happens. And then even those who, some are going to have a hard time accepting the new, that is Jesus, his teaching, so on and so forth. And it could be something along those lines. But one thought that I heard from a friend of mine on this parable, it could be that maybe the message Jesus is getting across and talking about, how you work with garments, how you work with wineskins, is kind of that it's just common sense. And maybe that's Jesus's point, is we use common sense and understanding when it comes to, patching clothes, and when it comes to old and new wine and the wineskins. Well, this kind of goes back to what he was saying about when the scribes and Pharisees asked, why do your disciples not fast? And Jesus is trying to tell them with this parable, well, it just makes sense. Use some common sense why my disciples are not fasting. Because again, I am here. They will fast. It will make sense that when I'm gone, they will be fasting. But it doesn't make sense for them to do it now. And that very well could be the point Jesus was making in adding this parable right after he gave them this answer to their question. So think on this some more. Hopefully study it out yourself. Find out if you can find any other, thoughts or meanings on this. And I certainly want to learn if I'm off the mark, or or something that could help me. Absolutely, I would welcome that. But also just a reminder that Jesus here, and telling them that the days will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them. That could be a couple of things. Jesus knows that, obviously he's going to end up being arrested, taken away from them. He's going to be tortured. He's going to be crucified. He's going to die. They will be without him for a time. Maybe even, we know he's going to be risen from the dead. Jesus is going to ascend to the Father. Jesus is not going to be with them after that. Not in, physical form. But we do know he would send the Holy Spirit. But here we even see Jesus foretelling what is coming with his death, with his resurrection and ascension. And he is giving signs and hints of that. Let's continue to grow in our faith. And let's make sure we are spending time with Jesus. And make sure we're not letting things get in the way of that. God bless.